Ladies and gentlemen, please return to your seat or find a new one as I invite Alan Ferguson up to lead us in opening worship for this. There he is.
I'd like you all to stand, please. I'd like you to join in singing Lift Every Voice and Sing, a hymn I didn't know until I was like 28 years old, singing in a seminary choir. I was going to share my hymnal with a black pastor standing next to me because I thought, well, maybe he didn't know it either. He said, I've been singing this since I was a boy. We're still way too segregated, even in our hour of worship. So let's lift every voice and sing. Let us join in this litany. We remember the conviction of Martin Luther King Jr. that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. We remember Martin's warning that a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, is less than a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. Therefore, let us pray that those who work We remember Martin's insight that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny, which affects one directly, affects all indirectly. We remember Martin's lament that the contemporary church is often a weak, ineffectual voice with an uncertain sound. It is so often the arch supporter of the status quo. Far from being disturbed by the presence of the church, the power structure of the average community is consoled by the church's silent and often vocal sanction of things as they are. We remember Martin's hope that dark clouds of racial prejudice will soon pass away, and the deep fog of misunderstanding will be lifted from our fear-drenched communities in some not-too-distant tomorrow. The radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation with all their scintillating beauty. Amen.
Please be seated. An announcement I received after our last plenary reads as follows. Dear Bishop Mockholtz, would you please remind the delegates to stop by the prayer room located at Aqueduct A. There are prayer rocks and the sound of a trickling fountain. There is a faith crossword puzzle. There are adult coloring sheets. See the sample on the reverse side? See the sample? You decide if you want to stay inside the lines or not. How many of you are inside the lines colorers? Let's be honest. I would have guessed most of you would have been. So the invitation has been offered to you to make use of the prayer room. Stop by. No one will know if you're there or not, but find some peace and quiet, leave a prayer, play with the crossword puzzle, and make use of the gifts that are present there. We are going to move on to the recognitions portion of this plenary. We're going to recognize ordination anniversaries, discipleship awards, some outgoing deans, and I think that's it. So what's going to happen is I will invite people forward. I will invite them to come up this set of stairs and congratulate them, and then Tom will hand them a certificate and I will hand them a holding cross, which we began handing out last year, in a bag with some instructions on how one might use this, and then they will exit to my left. If you'd like to take a picture, I've been advised that somebody wanted pictures. If you want to take a picture from a close-up, simply move forward at that point in time and take a picture, and then we'll keep moving through the list like that. So we're going to begin with the Discipleship Award, which is the Synodical Discipleship Award. I want to invite Beth Walker to the podium along with Laurel McCurdy. Laurel is this year's recipient of the Synodical Discipleship Award, and Beth is going to tell us a little bit about her. You can look on page 18 in your celebration and resource book to discover a little more about Laurel and her ministry and gifts.
Good afternoon. My name is Beth Walker, and I'm the chairperson of the Synod Global Ministry Committee. It's my pleasure to introduce Laurel McCurdy as the recipient of the Synod Discipleship Award. Laurel has given of her time and talents to local and global mission for as long as I can remember. Besides her extensive service within her home congregation and community, Laurel has attended Region 7 gatherings for global mission and malaria, showcased fair trade coffee and snacks here at Synod Assembly, and has traveled to our companion Synod of Zimbabwe to share her story and bring back stories from our partners in that country. But in service to the Synod, Laurel agreed to a one-year stint as malaria coordinator for the malaria campaign, which turned into an intensive 3-year commitment. With unparalleled enthusiasm, organization, and dedication, which I appreciated, and all of our global ministry team appreciated, Laurel led this Synod well past a $100,000 goal towards the ELCA campaign. She traveled to Chicago on her own time to meet with coordinators from around the United States and share ideas. She tested educational and fundraising ideas and promoted them through deans, pastors, and congregations. She worked with other Region 7 coordinators and made the malaria campaign and resources available at each Synod Assembly during the campaign. I have always felt that the Discipleship Award should be an IOTA award. And IOTA stands for Inspiring Others to Act. With her service, especially as malaria coordinator, Laurel has inspired people in her congregation, in our Synod, in Region 7, and even across the United States. I know she has inspired me. Congratulations, Laurel. Well deserved.
But let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Amos 5:24 was on a World Hunger poster at Zion many years ago, and that verse became an umbrella over the work I did at church. It was at Synod Assembly in 2009 that I first heard the words, "We are resurrection people who pray first, walk together, and change lives." That was a defining moment for me. I was part of a bigger we experience. A year later, I found myself sitting outside in the sunshine with 4,000 Lutherans, many dressed in purple. We were at the National Revival in Manama. 14 of us from the Upstate New York Synod had been invited to Zimbabwe to connect with members of the ELCZ. Bishop Ambrose Moyo was preaching, and he said, "If one of us has AIDS, we all have AIDS." That was another transforming moment for me. The we became one body. When I invite others to donate food and hygiene products for local veterans, or to purchase fair trade items that will support small-scale farmers in their communities, or to raise money for bed nets to help prevent malaria in Africa, God's justice and love, the we and the oneness are there. And now I want to thank Bishop Markholz, this assembly for honoring me with a 2016 Synodical Discipleship Award. I would also like to thank our Synod's Global Ministry team and the World Hunger team for encouraging me, and the people at Zion Lutheran Church, New Hartford, for nourishing me. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurel and Beth. I'm going to invite the outgoing deans to begin making their way to the podium, please. Ernie Varga from Southern Tier, Neil Catterman from Niagara Frontier, And for a second time, Nancy Millville from the Niagara Frontier. Nancy was kind enough, when Neil had to step down, to step in and take over for him pro tem until a new dean was elected. That was Lee Miller in the Niagara Frontier. Also, we want to remember verbally Ali Leitzel, who is not with us, but who served in the Hudson Mohawk Conference, recently left that call and is in the process of seeking a call in Erie, Pennsylvania area, where her husband lives. She gave me some weak excuse that she has not lived with her husband for 6.5 years, and she felt it was time to get back to him and spend some time in life with him. So we are thankful to her and wish her well. And we are thankful to these deans who have worked.
Neil's not here.
He was here.
He was here this
He was here. These deans who have worked long and hard. At our last pastoral staff meeting, I said explicitly to them that they are an extension of my office, and I consider them partners in this ministry. They carry out a ton of work in our midst, answer questions, try to give direction and hope, and offer the work of the Spirit in our midst as they move around the conferences and synods. So we thank Nancy and Ernie here, and we thank Neil and Ali wherever they may be. Thank you. We want to take a moment as well to recognize our outgoing Synod Secretary, Patrice Sampson Bouchard, who has served us well and faithfully for a 4-year term and is bringing her work in her ministry with us to a close at this assembly as she moves on to bigger and better things in her life. Patty, thank you so much for your gifts, for your time with us, for your humor, for your And now a sequence of anniversaries. And I believe I have everybody, and if I miss you, I apologize. Just throw a prayer rock at me or something. 25 years in ministry. We'll begin inviting Pastor Keith Campbell forward. Pastor Campbell is pastor at Redeemer Lutheran Church on Dewey Avenue in Rochester. Is Pastor Campbell here? There he is. Pastor Campbell has spent most of his days these past couple of months dealing with insurers and paperwork. As you know, as most of you know, there was a fire at Redeemer a couple of months, 3 months ago, February 18th. I knew he'd have the date. That did a massive amount of damage, millions of dollars worth, and he's in the process of working that out in these days in his ministry. So we thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Pastor Randy Millville. Pastor Randy Millville has been at Zion and Clarence Center for 25 years. He began his ministry there and continues there and has seen great growth and development. He's not only served 25 years in ministry, but in the same place, which is a rarity these days, and most experts would argue is a gift to the church that has served, the longevity of a pastor who brings gifts and grows with that community. So Randy, we congratulate you, and we thank you for your 25 years of ministry. Bruce Schrader. I saw Bruce here before. Then again, maybe I'm seeing things. Is Bruce here? Bruce. Next in line will be Charles Green.
Here's Bruce.
I see Bruce is coming. I'm just getting people ready for this. Bruce is celebrating his 50th anniversary of ordained ministry. serving most recently in Oswego and on to retirement, and continues to work with us and share his gifts across the church as he continues his ordained ministry in our midst. We thank you, please. Charles Green doesn't look a day over 55 years that he's served in the ministry. Charlie has been a member of the Synod and a faithful pastor both during his years of ordained ministry and following his retirement. He has been a mentor for many and a guide along the way, and we're thankful for the gifts that he has shared. 55 years, what's that like? Great. Good. Thank you. And last but not least, Vern Squire. I said to Vern at the lunch table when I went to Atonement in 1990, Vern and a couple of other pastors were the old guys in the conference. And by the time I left Atonement a year and a half ago, I had become Vern Squire because I was one of the old guys. Interestingly enough, Vern was the interim pastor at Atonement, who made the transition between Pastor Connie Grogan and myself and helped the congregation through healing and help and hope. He has been for me a role model and a mentor. One of the things I've appreciated about Vern is he's always been straightforward and honest, and has told me not a lot, but has occasionally made recommendations and suggestions to me and told me when I'm wrong or might rethink things, which is probably a lot more than I'm willing to admit. But I am personally thankful for his ministry in this conference and the years that I have had to spend with him and learn from him. He now winters in Florida and summers in this area. And I should also give a shout out to Ginny, his wife, without whom he would not be who or where he is today, as I know how important spouses are. So Vern, thank you for your years of ministry, even as they continue. And God bless you. And now I'm going to invite those who are receiving Conference Discipleship Awards to come forward as I read your name. I'm going to invite their deans to accompany them, please, if you would. These are folks who were nominated and elected at their conference assemblies, and we have 5 of these this year. Keith Barr, St. Paul's Dansville, Genesee Finger Lakes Conference. Judy Becker, Messiah Schenectady, Hudson Mohawk Conference. Sylvia Lipsey, St. Timothy, Bemis Point, Southwest Conference. William Bill Greger, Emmanuel Corning, Southern Tier Conference. And Elaine Smith, First English, Syracuse Central Crossroads Conference. If you would come forward, please. And if you came forward in that order, it'd be really helpful alphabetically for us. You're not first.
It's okay.
You can come up. You can come up.
Come on. You got a name tag on.
Yeah, we'll just read the name. Sylvia is the first to receive. We're going to be out of order, but that's fine.
Judy Becker.
I was going to guess that. Judy Becker is next. Elaine Smith is third. Bill? I knew I'd get that wrong. Keith Barr, St. Paul's Dansville. And is William Bill Groger? Do I have that right?
Congratulations.
Is William here? Bill's not here.
Okay.
We're going to pause a minute to get a picture of all of you. So there are people sitting out there who are taking snapshots. All the people at the table are leaving. Are we good? No? Hold on. Okay. Whew, that was fun. I'm going to turn the podium over to Vice President Madden for presiding for the election of a secretary.
Thank you, Bishop. From the bulletins. At the evening service tonight, the sermon topic will be, "What is Hell?" Come early and listen to our choir practice. Eight new choir robes are currently needed due to the addition of several new members and to the deterioration of some older ones. Applications are now being accepted for 2-year-old nursery workers. The pastor will preach his farewell message, after which the choir will sing, "Break Forth with Joy." And this one came into me on a card from Transfiguration Lutheran Church. Bishop Mockholtz is holding a workshop on how to lead a meeting and keep it under an hour long. It will be held next Wednesday from 7 to 9 p.m. Craig Swanson, those applause are for you. That was priceless. All right. I will ask the secretary for the next 24 hours to give us a report on registration. Patty Sampson-Bouchard.
The total attendance is now 412 with 337 voting members.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the election of secretary. The duties of the secretary are to keep the minutes of all meetings of the Assembly, of the Synod Council, and the Executive Committee, and to attest to all instruments which require the same, classify and arrange all important papers and documents, and deposit them in the archives of the Synod, and submit to the secretary of this church at least 9 months before each regular churchwide assembly a certified list of the voting members elected by the Synod Assembly. Constitutionally, the secretary position can be filled by either a lay or an ordained person. The secretary of the Synod is elected at a regular meeting of the Synod Assembly to a term of 4 years and may be re-elected. A majority of the legal votes cast shall be necessary for election, and the term of office shall commence at the close of the assembly at which the secretary is elected. So enjoy these last moments of freedom. We turn now to page 3 in your gray nominations booklet, and we will proceed with the election. We have one nominee for the position of secretary, the Reverend Debbie Turley, and I ask her to approach the podium. It is our custom in the Synod at the election of officers to ask the nominees to make a brief address before the assembly, and Pastor Turley is prepared to do that.
So our bishop likes to laugh, and my standing up here right now before all of you reminds me of that old adage, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Whether I had planned to do this or not, I am honored to have been considered for this very honored position. And whether God leads us into places that we had planned or not, when God calls, there's really no point in arguing. Just look at all the people in Scripture who were called unexpectedly to do some pretty amazing things for our Lord. I am so excited about the future of the ELCA and the future of the Upstate New York Synod. I'm excited because we face not only challenges, but so many opportunities. All of those things we've been talking about and wrestling with for the last 24 hours and will continue to talk about and wrestle with over time. But whether they are opportunities or challenges, I know that we will face them unencumbered by buildings or gender or race or anything else that has divided us or separated us from one another. I know that we will face the future with hope, believing that we are being guided by the Holy Spirit. And I thank you for considering me and for giving me this honor to serve you. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. We will now vote. We'll use our cards. All in favor of electing Reverend Debbie Turley to the office of Secretary of the Synod, raise your green cards. Thank you. All opposed, red cards. Abstentions? You are elected. Congratulations. We move on now to the elections to the Consultation and Discipline Committees. First, to the Consultation Committee elections. That information is printed in the gray nominations booklet on page 6. The Consultation Committee of this Synod shall consist of at least 6 persons and no more than 12 persons, of whom half shall be ordained ministers and half shall be lay persons, who shall be elected by the Synod Assembly for a term of 6 years without consecutive re-election. A majority is needed for election. We will vote first for the clergy positions on the Committee on Consultation, and the information on the nominees is on page 6 of your gray nominations booklet. As I announce the nominee names, I will ask them to please stand. Mr. John Jarvis. John, where are you? Are you here? John is not in the hall. And Mr. Greg May in the front. Thank you. Please be seated. We will elect these one at a time. There were no nominations from the floor yesterday, so these are our 2 nominees. And there are 2 seats available. So first, all in favor of electing Mr. John Jarvis to the Consultation Committee, please raise your green cards. All opposed, red cards. Abstentions. John is elected to the Consultation Committee. We'll now move on to the second lay seat. All in favor of electing Mr. Greg May to the Consultation Committee, raise your green cards. Thank you. All opposed, red cards. Abstentions. Greg, congratulations, you are elected. Oh, that was discipline. I'm sorry. I'm on the wrong page here. Okay, we'll address that one in just a moment. I'm sorry. The pages all look the same over here. All right, we're going back to the Discipline Committee, or Consultation Committee. Thank you. Page 6, clergy first. Reverend Steve Meyer. There he is. Thank you, Steve. All in favor of electing Steve Meyer to the Consultation Committee, raise your green cards. Thank you. Opposed, red cards. White cards for abstentions. Steve, you're elected. Thank you. Reverend Dan Nagel. Over here. Thank you. You may be seated. All in favor of electing Reverend Dan Nagel to the Consultation Committee, raise your green cards. Thank you. Opposed, red cards. Abstentions, white cards. Dan, you're elected. Thank you. Now we'll move on to the lay positions for the Consultation Committee. There are 2 seats available. The first nominee is Mr. Dwayne Keeler. Dwayne, where are you? Here we are, by microphone 2. Thank you, Dwayne. You may be seated. All in favor of electing Dwayne to the Consultation Committee, raise your green cards. Opposed, red cards. Abstentions, white cards. Dwayne, you are elected. Thank you. Ms. Sue Osborne, are you in the hall? In the back, wearing a sash. Thank you. All in favor of electing Sue Osborne to the Consultation Committee, raise your green cards. Opposed, the red cards. White cards for abstentions. Sue is elected. Congratulations. Now we move to the Discipline Committee. And we will start with the clergy positions. On page 12. There are 2 seats available again. Our first nominee is Reverend Dustin Wright. Dustin, where are you? Is Dustin here? Okay, well, he was nominated yesterday and we closed nominations. All in favor of electing Reverend Dustin Wright to the Discipline Committee, raise your green cards. Opposed, red cards. Abstentions, white cards. He is elected. And the second nominee for the second seat is Reverend Valerie DeCathano. Valerie, are you here? There's Valerie. Thank you. All in favor of electing Valerie, raise your green cards. Opposed, red cards. Abstentions, white cards. Valerie, you are elected. Congratulations. Now, finally, the lay seats on the Discipline Committee. We have seen these individuals moments ago. John Jarvis, for election to a lay seat on the Discipline Committee. All in favor of electing John, please raise your green cards. Opposed, red cards. Abstentions, white cards. John is elected. And Mr. Greg May for election to the Discipline Committee, the lay seat. Green cards are already flying up into the air. Opposed, red cards. Abstentions, white cards. Thank you, Greg. Congratulations to all of our nominees for being willing to stand for elections to these committees. We are moving now to memorial number 1, entitled The Repudiation of the Doctrine of Discovery, which will be presented by our Synod Secretary, Patty Sampson-Bouchard. I also ask Mr. Chris George to begin making his way toward the podium. This memorial came to our Synod from the Synod Council of the Southwest California Synod of the ELCA. It is being considered at many other Synod assemblies across this church. The Synod Council's recommendation is to adopt this memorial and to forward it to the churchwide assembly. A majority is needed for adoption. And I will ask Patty to read the original memorial.
The memorial reads, "Whereas we confess with our native sisters and brothers that the whole of creation is God's work, that God declares it all as good, and that God's Spirit dwells within it. And we confess that Jesus Christ became incarnate in human form to show God's love and mercy to all humanity, in all its variety, and to every race and people on every continent of the earth. And we acknowledge with pain and regret the damage done to the indigenous inhabitants of the Americas by the European conquest and migration to what Europeans called a New World, but which was in reality already the homeland of many peoples. And we recognize that Christian churches were and remain complicit in that conquest, migration, and dispossession, and that Christian churches helped develop conceptions of Native peoples that blamed them for their own ills, and that continue to perpetuate prejudice and injustice against them and their descendants. And we deplore and reject the so-called, quote, doctrine of discovery, end of quote, the legal principle originating with Pope Alexander VI in 1493 and further entrenched in U.S. federal law in Johnson versus McIntosh, 1823, that Native inhabitants have no property or any other rights which colonizing European nations and their sovereigns are bound to respect. This principle promotes the myth that the Americas were a largely empty land, that European conquerors and migrants had a right to claim, occupy, and possess simply by virtue of their Christianity and their European civilization. Therefore, be it resolved that the 2016 Upstate New York Synod Assembly explicitly and clearly repudiates the European Christian-derived doctrine of discovery, with its continuing impact upon tribal governments and individual tribal members to this day, acknowledges and repents of its complicity in the evils of colonialism in the Americas, and memorializes the 2016 ELCA Churchwide Assembly to join with the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Canada, the Episcopal Church, the United Church of Christ, the United Methodist Church, and the Moravian Church in doing the same. And be it further resolved that the 2016 Upstate New York Synod Assembly memorializes the 2016 ELCA Churchwide Assembly to join it in offering herewith a statement of repentance and reconciliation to Native nations in this country for damage done in the name of Christianity and civilization. Requesting the office of the presiding bishop to plan an appropriate ELCA national ceremony of repentance and reconciliation with tribal leaders, and provide resources for similar synodical and congregational observances with local tribal leaders at all such times and places as are appropriate. Be it further resolved that the 2016 Upstate New York Synod Assembly memorializes the 2016 ELCA Churchwide Assembly to request that the ELCA, with the help of Native communities, commit itself to the development of resources in the next triennium to help its congregations and people understand and reduce the negative impact of the doctrine of discovery and its consequences for Native people in North America. And be it further resolved that the 2016 Upstate New York Synod Assembly memorializes the 2016 ELCA Churchwide Assembly to request that the ELCA Congregational and Synodical Mission Unit bring forward to the 2019 Churchwide Assembly a renewed strategy for ministry with Native people in the ELCA and accompaniment with North American Native communities generally, with a particular commitment to long-term stable funding of ELCA American Indian and Alaska Native ministries, increasing partnerships with congregations and synods in the ELCA, and promoting efforts with the Native communities within which our congregations and synods reside.
Thank you. This comes to you from the Upstate New York Synod Council, and so therefore does not require a second by the Assembly. Christopher George is a member of the Synod Council, and I've invited him to speak first to the memorial. He and I have conferred, and his comments should be around 2 minutes, and if there is no objection, if his comments go beyond 2 minutes, I'm inclined to let him complete. All right, Chris.
Good evening. I'm also from Prince of Peace Lutheran Church in Depew, and I swear this will be 2 minutes or less. I'd like to start by providing a very brief summary of the doctrine which we just read, a Spark Notes version, if you will. The doctrine of discovery gave way or permission to claim lands in the New World for the Europeans that discovered them, as if to say the Native Americans that were already currently living there had no right to claim the land. A finders keepers sort of sense. I believe this memorial should be passed to the Churchwide Assembly in 2016, where I also hope it will be in favor. Now, from my understanding, we do not have a Native American congregation in our synod per se. However, this is a very important matter to bring to the churchwide level where these congregations are in need of assistance. Currently in Seneca Falls, Union Springs, New York, the Cayuga Nation, the nation I am a part of, has been fighting since 1980 to obtain the land that was taken from them and have not made much progress, and even backlash from the community surrounding them in this regard, putting up signs that state, "No sovereign nation, no reservation." This is a very real issue and is taking place right here in our synod. The resolutions that are stated are great steps forward in healing the hurt that still exists today between the United States and Native American tribes. The first resolution, to repudiate, which means to refuse to accept or be associated with, the doctrine of discovery, is huge. The Episcopal Church did this in 2012, the United Church of Christ in 2013, and it is now our time to bring this to the forefront again. The second resolution to offer a statement and organize a national ceremony is also key. In this time and age, we need to bring this to the nation's attention, as many might not even know such a doctrine exists or the effects that may have been experienced. And the last two resolutions, which call upon the ELCA to develop and provide resources to provide that education piece to those who don't necessarily understand the doctrine and the negative impact that is still being felt across the ELCA. And then furthermore, calling upon the ELCA to provide funding and programs to work with the Native communities are prime examples for ways for us to walk forward in a new light. I did speak to my father, who is the chief of the Cayuga Nation, and he responded with positive thoughts that the church has chosen to start to take steps to make a stance on this. We couldn't agree more with this memorial and look forward to hearing the conversation about it in the coming assemblies. Thank you.
I invite those wishing to speak to the memorial to approach a microphone. Microphone 3.
Hello. Hi. I apologize if I'm not doing this right, but I'll introduce myself. I know to do that. I'm Pastor Hannah Benedict. I am currently in Baldwinsville with St. Mark's. I just wanted to lift it up that this is an issue very near and dear to my heart, and specifically to members of my family. In the past, even Lutheran seminaries have not been the best agents of reconciliation, especially on this matter. And I would support this practical step in living into our identity as ambassadors for reconciliation. And I hope that we can support this.
Thank you. Microphone 1.
Alan Lambert from Concordia Lutheran Church in Kendall. I was just curious why Native Hawaiians weren't included in this.
Pardon me?
I was curious why Native Hawaiians were not included in this.
I don't have the answer to that question. It's the memorial as it came to us from the Southwest California Synod. Others wishing to speak? Microphone 3.
Ray Fitch, retired. Would it be appropriate to offer an amendment to the resolution to include Native Hawaiians?
You may do so.
I would like to do so.
All right, how do you want to do that?
I'm sorry I don't have the resolution in front of me.
We're going to need some language in order to make that happen.
I need a little help here. Could you do it because you found it?
Microphone 3.
Jeff Silvernail, Prince of Peace, Clifton Park. I would just help my friend Ray with this. So the final be it resolved, where it says stable funding of ELCA, American Indian, Alaskan Native Ministries. We could add Hawaiian Natives and any other place in the resolution where it lists either a Native American or Alaskan Natives. We could also add the words Hawaiian Natives. I'm not sure if it's listed anywhere else. I just happened to see that.
So anywhere where we see American Indian and Alaska Native, we would include Hawaiian Native?
Right. I think if it just says Native, it would automatically include Hawaiians, but anywhere it's specific, we probably should include Hawaiian Natives.
Okay. Is Hawaiian Native the proper terminology?
Do you know?
Hawaiian Native, is that acceptable language? You need to step up to a microphone. Okay, yes, thank you. All right, so there's been an amendment made that anywhere we have specific language that reads American Indian and Alaska Native, that we change that to American Indian, Alaska Native, and Hawaiian Native. Is there a second to the amendment? It's been seconded. We're now discussing the amendment. Anyone wishing to speak to the amendment? We have a white card at microphone 4.
Hi, it's Dan Hahn, St. Timothy's, North Greenbush. You might want to, I think we cover everything if we added Pacific Islanders. to the resolution.
That would
pretty
encompass
much-
Hawaiian Native then also?
It would, well, I would specify Hawaiian Native, but all those other islands will be covered by Pacific Islanders.
So let me go
Samoa.
to the maker of the amendment. Is that acceptable? That we use the language Pacific Islanders rather than Hawaiian Native? Pardon me?
It
Okay,
is acceptable
microphone
to-
3.
It is acceptable to me. I really don't know what the appropriate language would be.
Okay, microphone 1.
Excuse me, Scott Hannon, St. John, Williamsville. As my dear friend from the ELCA reminded me, we also have churches in the Caribbean that we might also consider, and I think maybe we should be less specific instead of talking about all these nuances about how to be overly specific. Can we just make it less specific? Or, if not less specific, at least bound to the area of which we're involved, so that we're not a church in upstate New York talking about Hawaiian Islands.
Okay, Ray, you've already spoken once. There's somebody behind you at microphone 3 that we'll go to next. Don't leave yet, Ray, though.
Rick Barker, Trinity East Amherst. Perhaps the language should be indigenous peoples.
Okay, we need an amendment with some wording. Right now, the amendment proposed includes Hawaiian Native. Can he withdraw the amendment? Can he withdraw? Microphone 1.
Norma Malfatti, Director for Evangelical Mission. It might be that it's American Indian and Alaskan Native, because that is the division or ministry of the ELCA that Prairie Rose Seminole covers, and we don't have a division or somebody in charge of Hawaiian Native or indigenous peoples, does it? I'm assuming that that's where Alaskan Native and American Indians came from.
Thank you. Microphone 4.
Hi, I'm Sarah Listener from Zion Lutheran Church in Cobleskill. And considering that Hawaii is in the synod from which this resolution comes from, maybe we don't need to make an amendment?
Thank you. All right, so the amendment on the floor adds the language Hawaiian Native anywhere we have specificity in terms of who we're referring to. Microphone 3.
Paul Shoup, retired. I move we table this item until tomorrow morning's agenda so that those who are working on language can figure it out.
Thank you. Does that need a second to table?
It's a motion to table.
Is there a second to table the motion? The majority? We're checking Robert's, just one moment. Thank you. The second was required. It's not debatable. Is that true? It's not debatable, so we're voting to table. If you wish to continue discussing this now, you will vote not to table. If you wish to table it, then you'll vote yes. Everybody understand? So all in favor of tabling the motion until tomorrow's plenary, raise your green cards. Thank you. Put those down. All in favor of continuing discussion on the amendment, raise your red cards. Okay, the motion and the amendment are tabled until tomorrow morning, and we will look for proposed language with which to work at that time. Thank you. All right, we're in the home stretch. We have a hunger action update from Pastor Dwight Wascom. Is he in the hall? I hear murmuring. No? All right. Let's see. Announcements as needed. I've had this announcement handed to me. The parking pay machine apparently is not ecumenical because it accepts Visa and MasterCards only. If you have Discover or American Express, you will need to change your religion. But if you've been having difficulty paying for parking in the machine with those cards, that's why. Eucharist worship begins at 7 o'clock back here in this space. Worship leaders will gather here at 6:30, or they'll gather in Empire South by the coat rack. And before the last announcement here, I'll ask our pipers to do whatever it is that pipers do to get ready to pipe. And while they're doing that, yikes. The Parable Bookstore, been asked to announce the Roadmap to Reconciliation is on sale for $1,000. No, $10. I could barely see the decimal point there. For $10, it's by Brenda McNeil. There's one copy left of October 31st, 1517 by Martin Marty. So if you've had your eye on that one, you'd better hightail it over there. So Roadmap to Reconciliation is on sale, marked down from $1,000 to $10. And the one copy left of October 31st, 1517 by Martin Marty. So we will conclude this plenary session by singing Amazing Grace, which is found in your celebrations booklet.